Imagine you were wealthy enough to travel first class aboard a transatlantic liner in the late Victorian age. You're about to step on board one of Victorian Britain's most famous ocean liners and experience the golden age of ocean travel in all its finest glory. But we'll also look at the other side of the coin and delve into the depth of the ship, where the poorest in society travel in the cramped confines of third class. We're joining the ship in Liverpool, where it'll soon depart for New York.
Good day to you, sir. Welcome aboard. Thank you, Porter. A fine day for it. Indeed, sir.
From the very beginning, the experience of a first-class passenger was carefully orchestrated. It feels smooth and effortless. A porter would personally guide you from the gangway to your cabin, passing only through parts of the ship reserved exclusively for the upper classes.
A fine day for the promenade.
Indeed, the sea is calm.
And the company is pleasant.
You're entering a world of polished wood, brass, carpets, and the elite of society. Nobility, businessmen, and wealthy families setting out across the Atlantic in comfort and style. Image was everything. Even this early in the voyage, you'd already be very aware of how you looked and how you carried yourself. Now, as we approach our cabin, it's worth noting that a typical first-class cabin, although luxurious in relative terms, was quite a bit smaller than most people assume. It would most likely have 2 single berths, rather than a double, and each berth would usually have a berth board along the side to stop you rolling out if the Atlantic turned rough. You might also have a chair and a small desk for reading, writing, and passing the time while at sea. There would also be built-in storage for the contents of your trunks, which would be filled with fine clothes. It might surprise you that there's no ensuite. Instead, you have this washstand, which allows you to wash, shave, and freshen up in your own room, while for toilets and full washing facilities, you would need to use the shared bathrooms elsewhere on the ship. You do, however, have the novelty of electric lighting and a steward's call button. All in all, it's a comfortable and private space. Not grand and opulent, but quietly refined, and generally a very pleasant place to be. Let's have a walk about and take in the sights. With only a short time left until sailing, many passengers would be making their way up to the upper decks, take the air and have one last look at land. There would have been a heightened sense of anticipation. This was far safer than travel in the age of sailing ships, but there would still have been at least some awareness that a voyage like this carried real risks. For most, though, the excitement of adventure and widening horizons would have been the main focus, and the decks would be alive with excited chatter and quiet social theatre as first-class passengers paraded their wealth for all to see. This was the place to see and be seen, to meet, greet, mingle and observe. Victorians were highly status-focused, and the class structure on board only magnified this. We'll take a slight detour now, slipping into the crew areas and heading up toward the bridge, or wheelhouse. This part of the ship was strictly off-limits to passengers. The ship's officers would be making the final preparations for departure, checking the passage plan on the charts and preparing for the manoeuvre out of the harbour. And here we see the man at the top of the hierarchy on board, the captain. He held ultimate authority and command over the ship, its crew, and everyone on board. Many captains of this era had plied the Atlantic for decades and possessed an enormous wealth of experience. Some had first gone to sea on sailing ships as boys in their early teens. They held an almost godlike authority on board and were highly respected by passengers and crew alike. Now, as promised, we're going to descend into the bowels of the ship, where the third-class cabins are located. This is a stark and cramped world compared with anything we've seen so far. The lowest cabins in the ship may well be below the waterline. It's a claustrophobic place, and the air smells of oil and wet wool. Only the bare minimum is provided here for basic human habitation. These passengers would already have spent days being processed in the docks, where they were washed, given basic health checks, and had their clothes disinfected, boiled or steamed to help prevent the spread of disease. There was often no porthole, and therefore no natural light. Space was extremely limited, and personal possessions had to be stowed wherever they could fit, often in or around the berth itself. Not far from the third-class accommodation is the ship's engine and boiler spaces. Let's have a look inside. ship like this would have huge coal-fired Scotch boilers, feeding twin triple expansion steam engines. Down here, temperatures could easily reach around 100 to 130 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly 38 to 54 degrees Celsius, and close to the furnaces it would have felt hotter still. Imagine carrying out the back-breaking task of shoveling coal in these conditions. Let's leave the engine room and move back up into the first-class accommodation. In complete contrast to what we've just seen, first-class passengers are enjoying afternoon tea in the main dining saloon, the epitome of the British high-class lifestyle. A subtle vibration and a low, steady thrum suggest that something is about to happen. We notice passengers heading out to the open decks, and huge plumes of smoke begin to rise from the funnels as the boilers are fired harder and the engines are brought up to working pressure. On the captain's order, the linesmen let go the mooring lines, and this great ship is free to proceed to sea. She carries on board around 2,000 passengers, some travelling for leisure, some to visit family, and many taking their first steps toward a new life, particularly those in third class. Many of the wealthier passengers may well be returning within a month or two, so for them this is the start of a significant adventure rather than a life-changing event. However, for many of those emigrating permanently to America, the journey carried a very different weight. It's most likely that a large proportion of third-class passengers were travelling on one-way tickets, with little expectation of ever returning to their homeland.
There. I can't bear it.
Whoever you were, this could be a sad and reflective moment, or an exciting and stimulating one, or perhaps both. Either way, there was a far greater sense of permanence than we experience with travel today. The world felt larger, and communication with those left behind would be infrequent. As this great liner slips quietly down the Mersey towards the open ocean, those on board can have little idea of what lies ahead. And as the land falls away behind them, there is suddenly very little left to hold on to. For many, this will be the last time they ever see Britain again.
Oh,
Careful there.
sorry, how clumsy of me.
Not at all.